Hi guys, welcome back. Today we're going to be doing a bit of a brand deep dive. I have most of what you can purchase from Saie Beauty. I've just picked out some of the colors I prefer, so we don't have like all the blushes or all the lipsticks, but we do have an excellent representation of the product line. Saie Beauty has been around for a couple of years now. They've been winning a bunch of awards. They've cleaned up a decent number of Allure Best of Beauty awards in 2021 and last year, 2022. So I'm excited to give it a try. I've really only tried their blush before, so this is going to be kind of a first impression of the brand. If you've never heard of Saie Beauty before, they do focus on clean beauty, more a natural look, so they don't have a whole lot of items, like there's no eyeliner, there's no eyeshadow, but it's also a fairly new brand, and they're growing their line a little more slowly, which is a really good idea instead of trying to launch a whole bunch of things at once. They're building the brand based on customer demand, so if people are clamoring for something, then they'll produce it. Like the concealer's fairly new and a few other items. So we're gonna start off with the Gel Illuminizer as a primer. This product can be used either on its own as a primer or mixed into your foundation, or you can even use it as a highlighter after you're finished with your foundation. We're already looking a little dewy, but no, more is more, so we'll add a little extra. I was a little surprised by how liquidy this was. We're gonna do an experiment. So, you can kind of, I was hoping it would like drip down. It sort of dripped down on my hands when I pumped it in. Yeah, you can. Yeah, it's a really thin consistency. So it goes on very nicely for a primer. It just helps your skin feel a lot more hydrated and ready for makeup. So yeah, I'm gonna put a little more in the areas where I have fine lines, just to make sure they're nice and plucked. All right, so I feel like we're pretty illuminated right now. It's mostly just hydrated. I don't feel like it's really glittery or anything that's gonna be too crazy underneath the skin tint. Speaking of skin tint, here is the Saie Beauty skin tint. I'm using the lightest shade. I picked up shade 1. This is very lightweight. They don't even refer to it as a foundation, but more of a skin tint. It does have SPF of 35, which is really nice. 30 is kind of my baseline, so anything above that is great. It's also a mineral sunscreen, so it's completely zinc. And with the tint, you're not gonna get that white cast. All right, I put 2 pumps in my fingertips. I did watch a few videos from the founder and watched her putting on this product, just because I figure they're the ones who made it. It was her vision, so if she puts it on a certain way, that's how it's intended to be used. I was going to use like a beauty sponge or like a beauty blender or something for it, but the way she does it is she puts 2 pumps, warms them up in her fingertips to get the emollients going, and then she applies it just with her fingertips to her face. So we're gonna give that a go for our first try using this. So I'm a BRB. Okay, now that I have this on, I've got a mirror, so I'm checking it out. It's quite dewy, like it's maybe a little overkill putting the Illuminizer on today since I was already a little shiny, but I wanted to try it out, so that's on me. I feel like, especially in any areas where I have like larger pores, it doesn't sit that nicely, but it could just be because I had the Illuminizer on underneath. So yeah, maybe, at least for me, it's better if I were actually using it as a highlighter. But there's some powder, so we'll see if it calms down a little bit once we powder it. Sometimes things just calm down on their own too as you go through, time. I did kind of pill a little bit, especially in any area where I rubbed it a little more. So I think like patting motion is the way to go. So yeah, maybe I would prefer using a beauty sponge to apply this. So we can try bouncing a little bit to see if it helps. Yeah, that helped a lot in the areas where I have the larger pores. I feel like it's not just sitting there looking a little odd, it's blended in a lot better now. Okay. So that could be a me problem. This is a first impression, so that's part of the process is kind of learning how a product works and what your preferred methods of applying that product are. So I think we're learning. One of my preferred ones would probably be a beauty sponge instead of my fingertips, and maybe not the Illuminizer first. Let's do some concealer next. Let's see how that goes. So the concealer is one of their newer products. I also have the lightest shade, I think shade 1 again for this. I'm not entirely certain how full coverage this is because I haven't tried it before. Since the tint is so light coverage, hopefully there's enough coverage here to help cover up lines. We'll start with just a little and add more if we need to. Okay, so I used just a little bit on one eye, so you can kind of see it does do some coverage for the circles, at least the dark coloration under the eye. Let's try adding a little bit more. Yeah, I feel like that's doing a nice job without coming out too thick. You know, sometimes when you're putting on concealer, it can end up looking a little like snake skinny or something on your, especially closer to the corner. But the inner corner looks good here, so I'm happy. Let's try the other eye. I like how there's some peach in this particular shade to help cover up the darkness. I'm actually really happy with how that looks. It looks a little more natural. You're just sort of covering it up. It's not too much. Yeah, that's nice. I look like I got a little more sleep last night, which is the goal. Especially when wearing a lighter skin tint, I don't like to have too heavy of a concealer because then it feels like, well, wow, you've really just caked on a bunch of stuff right here, but nowhere else. It feels like it's at least balanced if you have a fuller coverage foundation and you have a fuller coverage concealer. But these are both light, but it certainly gets the job done. All right, now we're gonna move on to some blush. I have had this one before, so this is the one product from the brand I've used. I found that I did prefer using the Laura Mercier blush to this one, but I only used this once or twice. And since then I've used the Laura Mercier blush a lot, so I feel like I'm better at applying a cream blush. And this was the first cream blush I had tried in quite a while. So let's see, now that I'm a little better at it, if I can do a good job, and maybe I'll enjoy this a little more. I think it also throws me off how it's like a giant doe foot applicator for the blush. So I think I tried putting it directly on my cheek, and this time I think I'll try maybe I'll just like tap a little bit on my finger instead of trying to like apply it directly to my cheek. Because that's how I usually use the Laura Mercier blush, and I like that technique. This is so bright. Way too much. Okay, so a little goes a long way. I just put on way too much, so we're gonna go in with the sponge and try to take some of this off. All right, well, it's an improvement, but it's like salt. Sometimes when you put too much salt in when you're cooking, there's just no way to get it out. It's kind of like the liquid blush. I feel like it's really hard to turn back time and undo what you've done if you put too much on. Okay, and we're back with a new background because as I was trying to remove some of the blush, I realized it looked pretty good in the mirror, or if I was like angled. Anyway, the blue was really causing this to just be a lot more vibrant than it really was in real life. So we've toned down the blush. It has kind of migrated a little bit in terms of where I would normally place blush, but that's kind of my own fault. So we're fine, we're gonna go with it. So it's potent. I don't think Poppy's my favorite color, but after looking at it now, I like it, but it's so dangerous, I guess would be the right word for me. Like I'd have to put on such a tiny amount and then really spend a lot of time blending it out. I might try a different shade from them, but I don't know. This came in one of those like Blue Mercury edits, so you don't really pick out your colors, but they'll curate these usually for the seasons, like a spring edit of like great makeup colors for spring. And I think this came in one of those because I don't think I would have independently purchased this color. It's a little crazy. Not crazy, just for me. Anyway, after having this slip tint on my skin for a little bit longer, I noticed it's not really settling in any lines. Like a lot of times foundations will just kind of, you know, make those lines a lot more visible, but I don't feel like that's happening. So that's nice. That's a win. I think it really was just maybe not the Illuminizer first. I'm definitely going to be playing around with the slip tint some more because I know it's very popular. I also love a good mineral sunscreen, so you know, I'm definitely motivated to see if I can make this work. All right, so I should do the other side for blush. We're going to be very respectful. We're going to use the tiniest amount because this has power. And we'll see, fingers crossed. I feel like it's so dangerous with that giant doe foot. So we're going to take the tiniest little dollop. Okay, using the smallest amount I could possibly take, I think we have a pretty nice result. It almost still looks a little vibrant, but blush fades so quickly that we're gonna hope that this is ultimately the perfect amount. So over here, it's a tiny bit more intense on my left side, but that's okay. I promise to make sure to even everything out before I leave the house. Yeah, we're pretty close, so we're just gonna go with it from here and we'll see what happens. All right, now we're gonna move on to something I'm really excited to try. This is their bronzer. It's in like a little jar like this. I know the Chanel one is very popular, also in a little jar like this. I don't know very many bronzers that come in pots such as these. All right, so here's the inside. This is the light one, and it looks a little dark, so we're a little scared. After the blush incident. I do have the brush that they recommend using. So you can see the top is a little more dense. It almost looks like a foundation brush. They just sort of mention it as being a general blending brush, but it is recommended to be paired with this bronzer. So we're gonna try that. We're gonna only start with a tiny amount. Try to take a tiny amount. It's hard to tell if it really picked much up, but we're just gonna assume it did at least pick up some. Cross your fingers for me. Oh, leave a comment. Do you think this is gonna go well? Like, pause the video, leave a comment. Is this gonna be awesome, or did I take too much and I'm gonna regret my life choices? Let me know, we'll see. All right, anyone who said I barely picked up any, you're a winner. You didn't really win much except, you know, bragging rights, but I don't really see anything coming off. So we'll go in once more for a tiny bit. Also, sometimes with the brand new product, it can take a little bit of swiping to kind of get, you know, off some sort of top layer of, I don't know what, but it feels like it takes a little bit of use to really get to the point where pigment comes out. So we'll kind of assume that's what happened. Ooh, I feel like I got some that time. All right. Yes, I definitely got, I think, a good amount. I don't think it's too much or too little. I think we're in a good place. Just a touch of warmth. Ooh, that is really pretty. Tempted to try a tiny bit more, but we won't. A little, yeah, let's just try a little bit up here and see how it works up there before moving on to the other side. Don't know that I got quite enough. Tiny bit more. All right, for me, I think that was a nice amount. Okay, yeah, just like a touch of warmth to help me not look so flat. All right, we're gonna go for the other side, dip in a little more. We're feeling a little more confident about how much I pull out, so this is where it gets dangerous, is when you have a little more confidence. I feel like since this side has more blush, this side needs a little more, you know, bronze. Does that logic work out? Eh. All right, yeah, it's pretty nice warm shade. I don't think it wasn't as hard to apply as the blush, thank goodness. I think we're awfully dewy, so it's a little hard to tell. I definitely gonna have to get into the powder to see if we can calm this down a little. Sometimes when it's super dewy and then you put on a little face powder, at least for me, since I have more dry skin, it ends up looking perfect. So we're crossing our fingers that's what's gonna happen. I think we're in a good place. We're gonna leave the bronzer alone. It is really pretty. I can't wait to try this with some other foundations to see how nicely it blends. So the next step would be the highlighter. I have one of their highlighters. I don't know that I need this right now. So we might just put a little on my hand just to see what it looks like. I did get the more bronzy shade. I think it's actually called bronze. Yes, bronze nectar. See how this ends up looking. So it feels a little thick, but it's melting immediately once I put my finger on it. It gets the heat from my hand and my finger. Okay, so that's really pretty light. So it's not like bronze. And that's gonna be really pretty, especially in the summer when I have a little more color. But that's just not necessary right now. I also don't know that it could add anything. Like I could go in and it would just probably not even be visible. If you'd like to see like how you can fake a vacation look, comment down below and maybe we'll make that video happen. That sounds like fun. Maybe I'm just thinking of that because we could all use, at least in the Northern Hemisphere, we could use a little extra warm, maybe an imaginary vacation. It's all good. So we're going to be using their Fiber Brow product. This brush is just so tiny and you can really see the little fibers. So I think this will add some nice volume, but there is a brush on the end, I promise. Oh yeah, that's subtle, but I definitely feel like it filled it in. It seems pretty close to my color though, so it didn't really darken it too much, but it filled in like the sparse area. And where I have a little more gray. Oh yeah, that looks nice. It's literally just my brow, but better. Well, that makes me very happy. I love brush products like this, where you just sort of brush in a little bit of color. Definitely my favorite. Yeah, this is definitely my favorite product so far from the line, in addition to being my favorite way to do my brows, with a little bit of a brush with some color. So I have 3 different shades of their lipstick. We have Modern, which is a more everyday sort of pinky shade. And then we have Nouveau, which is a little more of a brown shade. But I don't think it's too opaque, so it isn't going to be quite like a 90s brown, which is a little intense, and this will be a little more wearable. And then we have Pop, which is a little darker, should be a nice date night shade. In the red family, but like a purpley sort of red. All right, so we'll start with the lightest shade, Modern. All right, this is a lot darker than I expected. Apparently I also felt the need to overdraw my lips for some reason. I don't know. You know how sometimes you start with your lipstick and then it just, you like slip or something happens and it goes a little outside the lines and you're like, oh no, now I've committed. It feels very smooth. It isn't super hydrating, but it's not totally matte either. So it's kind of like a nice in-between. So you don't feel like it's gonna slide off, but you don't, feel like you're gonna get dried out. So that's Modern. All right, so now we're gonna try Nouveau, which is the slightly more brown shade. I'm curious, since the other one was darker than I expected, this one might be too, and I thought they were supposed to be a little less opaque, so we'll be careful with this. Yeah, that doesn't end up being too dark of a brown, but it's definitely a dark shade. It just doesn't go too brown. It's a little more gray. Interesting name, Nouveau. Feels a little more vampy. Yeah, they do feel nice and creamy, but not, not too much. So I feel like it will stay on the lips for a little while. All right, and here's the last one, Pop. Wow, they're a lot more opaque than I expected. They look nice. They're not really patchy. I think Nouveau, maybe I didn't do a very good job applying it. Also, sometimes when you're doing lipstick after lipstick, at least for me, my lips get a little dried out, which can make it a little more of a challenge to apply. Yeah, I think this is my favorite color, actually. It's more berry. It's nice. So we only have a few things left. We've got some mascara and a little bit of face powder. So let's do the powder first. I did get the translucent powder, and it does come in, I haven't opened it quite yet, so I can do this. But you can actually sort of slide it to open or close. It's nice, so you can like twist it and then twist it again. So when you travel, it's like closed. And I'm gonna use my favorite powder brush lately, the Sephora 50.5. It's just a little smaller and I feel like it gets, especially under your eyes, so nicely. All right, so we've toned it down somewhat. I haven't gone too crazy with powder just because, again, like salt, hard to remove it once you put on too much. Yeah, it's certainly an improvement. Now this glow is kind of highlighting the texture. I was thinking I was having a nice skin day. It's great to try out like a light skin tint today. Then I go and put on a bunch of Illuminizers, so it's like, hello, skin texture. I'll try a tiny bit more. All right, well, I don't necessarily want to over powder, so we'll leave it like this for a minute. See how, if it like absorbs a little more, if it calms down a bit before applying even more. I think it's an improvement. All right, well, let's try out the mascara. I did get a mini size of their black mascara. The wand is a little more spiky in terms of its shape, which is not usually my favorite, but we'll see how this goes. It could be really good for separation of lashes, which is always really nice, but it's just a little freaky to apply such a spiky one. Wow, yeah, we have nice separation and they are quite long now. All right, maybe I could warm up to this shape. Just don't like looking at it. You like you're watching yourself with this really spiky thing next to your eyeball. It's disconcerting. It is effective. This has really done a nice job separating. This is one thing that drives me crazy with mascara sometimes is when it's a little clumpy. But this, definitely not. I'm tempted to try one more layer just to see what happens. Okay, that might have been too much. Now I'm committed. I'll do the other eye. Okay, I really like those results. It looks nice. Probably could have stopped at one, especially for an everyday sort of look. Definitely could have stopped at one coat, but I wanted to see what happened if I tried to, you know, turn it up a little bit. We do have the darker, well, they're all darker than I expected, but we have the darker, more berry shade of lipstick, so we're a little closer to the evening side of this look. All right, so that's everything I have from Saie Beauty. So let's take a look. We'll do some final thoughts. I really like how I keep trying to call it a foundation, but it's the slip tint, so it's a skin tint. Not settling into fine lines. I feel like it was my bad for putting on the Illuminizer, but otherwise, I don't feel like you can really look and be like, oh, that's foundation. I feel like it's melting a little better, kind of like the Kira Weiss one does. I think once I bounced it with a makeup sponge, it melted pretty nicely around the pores, and it does still seem to look nice in that area. The brow product, though, was one of my favorites. I think I really liked that. It does a nice job making them look fuller without looking, you know, like too overdone. And it's very close to my natural shade, which helps, at least for me. Yeah, the blush, I think if I'm very careful, it looks nice. Like I do feel like even this side where I had added a tiny bit more has toned down just a touch. Maybe it was the powder, maybe it was just time. Yeah, I definitely want to play around with some more of these items. I think I would love to try the skin tint without the Illuminizer. It's got an SPF of 30, so I would like to try wearing that for a couple of days, not even with much other makeup, but just kind of by itself as my SPF. Maybe with the brow product, because that was really nice. And the lipsticks are nice. They look good. They're darker than I expected, so I might try using like the blurred lip technique where I use a lip brush to apply them to make them slightly more sheer, because I did like the colors very well. It's just not so much like an everyday kind of look, at least for me. I do look forward to trying the bronze highlighter. I know I didn't need any more highlighter today, but I think it would be very lovely on its own. And you can still see a little bit on the hand. It's not too shiny in the area where it was applied, but like just enough. So I think that's great for a more casual look. So what are your thoughts? What do you guys think? Have you used any products from Saie Beauty? What are your opinions? But yeah, so those are my thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're new here, my name is Julia, and I do videos focused mostly on skincare and makeup. Please give this video a thumbs up if it was helpful, and subscribe if you'd like to see more. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks, bye.